I'm Melissa, and this is the Book Break. And today I'm really excited to talk to a middle grade author with a brand new book. Her name is Hena Khan, and I'm going to bring her right in.
Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Hey, great. Now, did I say your name right?
Yes, you said it perfectly.
Okay, awesome. So, Hena, I've been reading your book that just barely came out. Amina's Voice was the book 1, and now book 2 is Aminas Song, right?
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. So tell us, for our viewers that aren't familiar with it, tell us a little bit more about these books.
Sure. So Amina's Voice, started Amina's journey, her story, and it's centered around a middle schooler who is growing up in the Midwest, who is a bit shy and inhibited, but has this amazing secret gift, a beautiful singing voice and musical ability. And she has to sort of find the courage to learn how to share this gift with the world because she's very, very stage shy. And along the way, you're learning about middle school drama and friend changes and family changes, and actually Amina learns to find her voice but also brings together her community in a time of crisis. And in Amina's Song we get to continue her journey, and it actually begins with her on a literal journey to Pakistan. She visits her extended family there and is so moved by the experience and by the love she receives from her relatives and how fascinating and colorful the culture is. And when she gets back home, she's made a promise to her uncle that she's going to share the beauty of Pakistan with her peers. And she realizes it's actually a lot harder than she expected, because people have preconceived notions of what Pakistan is like, and it's not like what she experienced.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really loved about the book was I felt like it opened up a world for any of us that have family members that live in other countries, and getting to our roots and really trying to understand not only our family and friends, but also for others to want to understand other cultures too. Because I noticed one of the things with Amina when she came back was her friends weren't as excited to hear about her month in another country as she was. So that was really interesting to me. And I loved a part in there where she was going to eat lunch with her friends, and her friend Emily was going to have a sandwich that was actually a Pakistan meal, and yet she herself was too embarrassed to eat it.
Yeah, these are all things I've taken from my own experiences. Like I had a trip when I was around Amina's age to Pakistan, and I came back feeling so, enriched by it and excited to share it. And I did have the same reaction where my friends were politely interested, but then they wanted to move on and talk about, other things. And I was like, do you not realize I'm completely changed, and I have so much to share. And so Amina's going through a bit of that. And also, where that whole question of belonging, where do I fit in? Who are my friends? And what do they really get me? All those things that we feel like, especially when we're in middle school, but always. The cultural parts too are fun. That, my kids now, it's funny. I used to be so embarrassed if I had a strange food in my lunchbox, and now, other kids are bringing samosas and chutney to lunch. And I'm like, what? That's a thing now. So Amina gets to experience that as well.
Yeah, I love that. And, I have an almost 12-year-old myself. And so I think of these things and the experiences that Amina goes through. And I think, kids can really relate to this, trying to understand how they fit in. And another thing I really enjoyed about this book was she's kind of coming into her own shoes and trying to figure out her own confidence and who she is outside of her friends. And I think that's an important thing that all kids go through. And let's be honest, adults.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also realizing that relationships change and people change, and then that's okay. And that in this case, she doesn't quite outgrow her friends, but she does see that they've all kind of taken a different turn and they all are focusing on different interests. And instead of feeling threatened by that, she comes to understand that they can still support each other and be there for each other, even if the friendship isn't exactly the same as she was used to it being in the past.
Yeah. And for me, this is my first middle grade series reading from a cultural perspective of a Pakistan girl. And I love that because I think it's so important for us to understand people. And I'm interested to hear more about how you approach this, because obviously you've mentioned this is your background, but I love that you're introducing this to those of us that aren't as familiar with it.
Thank you. I'm so glad. Yeah, and for me, I grew up a Pakistani American like Amina. My parents were immigrants from Pakistan to the U.S. Before I was born, so I was, you know, balancing two cultures my entire life. And so for many people, from not just Pakistani Americans, but anyone who has a connection to another culture, that's something you learn to navigate, how to walk that line, how to fit in at school, but also respect the traditions and, culture that your parents or others may have brought with them. So hopefully, I love hearing from readers, even from other backgrounds who say that they could totally relate to Amina, because at her core, I find her to be, or I hope she's a very relatable everyday girl.
Yeah, and I think she is. And it made me think about my grandmother, who is from Germany, and she immigrated to the United States right after World War II, but she didn't want anyone to know that she was German because people were not very friendly to Germans after World War II. Right. And so I like that you talk about preconceived notions in this, and how some people can have their own ideas and opinions of other cultures, but how important it is for us to really try to understand people and appreciate and accept them for who they are.
Yeah, I love that. And for me, it was really important that, we talk about the danger of the single story, right? And the power of narrative, and how if you've only heard one thing about a group of people, whoever they are, you might assume that that applies to everyone. And we know that that's not true. And in a country filled with millions of people, one person's experience or a small group of people do not represent the whole. And that's where Amina is trying to, confront that notion when she does a school presentation on Malala, who she sees as, a hero and, an advocate for education, but people at school focus only on the trauma and the violence that she endured, and instead almost like pity her and, are relieved that, oh, we're so glad we don't live in Pakistan. And that wasn't Amina's intent at all. She felt very proud of this figure. And so she realized that, they need to know more than only part of that story.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome too. And another thing I would love to hear from you about in our last few minutes is you have another book too that's different from this series. And so even though, Amina's Voice and Aminas Song is brand new, you have a take on a Little Woman's story, Little Women, which is a beloved story. So more to the story, which I just found fascinating. Tell us just a little bit more about this book.
Sure. So Little Women was my all-time favorite book when I was growing up, and a book that I used to read over and over and over again. And I think I just deeply connected to the story of these four sisters who were growing up in a different time period than I was. And I think I could identify with some of the cultural norms from the 1800s as my own in a way. And so I thought it lent itself really well to a Pakistani-American, version, although I didn't end up retelling the story as much as I just took inspiration from it and built a new story of four sisters navigating life and experiencing some of the same challenges that you find in Little Women, but hopefully readers will find the little connections that I made and enjoy this fresh take on it.
Yeah, definitely. And you've done a number of school visits as well. I know with COVID, it's been difficult to be able to do those things, but tell us just a little bit about what you've experienced as you've gone out and visited kids in schools and talked with them about your books and brought more information about other cultures to them.
Sure. So, well, I'm grateful to be able to do it virtually now. So that's amazing that I'm still able to visit kids across the country. But when I used to do it in person or through a screen, it's been amazing to be able to share my background, my story, how I didn't see myself in the books I read as a child, and really had this enormous lack of representation, and about how if you see something that's missing, you have the power to make a difference. And I talked to kids about how, I noticed this and I wanted to change it, and I was able to do that. I think for kids who are from other backgrounds like me, who've never seen, an author of color or someone from their background or another Muslim American, it's really empowering for them and inspiring to see someone come in and talk about, being able to do something like this, because I know I never had role models like that when I was growing up. So I'm just really grateful to be able to hear from them that my stories mean something, that my personal story means something to them, and that they're happy to hear it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for being with us. If our viewers want to learn more about you, where can they go?
They can find me online, my website, henakhan.com. They can find me on social media at Hena Khan Books. I hope they will connect. Everybody, hi, please do. And if you read my books, if you leave me reviews on Amazon or Goodreads or anywhere, I do read them. Some authors stay far away from reviews, but I enjoy reading every single one. So thank you to everyone who does that.
That's great. Well, thank you again for being here with us, Hena. It's been great.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to talk with you.
Thanks. And thank you all for joining us on the book break. We'll see you next time.